Writers have a lot of power when they put pen to paper. And I think they don't understand the implicit damage they do to animals by reinforcing these stereotypes or these fears that we have.
Welcome to the Our Hen House interview. I'm Jasmine Singer.
I'm Marianne Sullivan.
And we're so excited to have our good friends, John Yunker and Midge Raymond, here today again to talk about one of our favorite subjects, which is writing for animals. We're going to get to that in just a second. But just a quick reminder first that the Our Hen House podcasts now come out on multiple days a week. Tuesdays is Rising Anxieties. The Hen Report comes out on Thursdays, and the long form interview, which is this, comes out on Fridays. Bonus for Flock members comes out on Mondays. We're a podcast and we're on YouTube, so please hit subscribe and hit like wherever you listen. All right, Marianne, why don't you do the honors?
Yes, I would be thrilled to, because this is not our first rodeo. I guess I shouldn't use that expression with Midge and John. And I'm so happy to have them back because it's always such an interesting conversation. And Midge Raymond and John Yunker are the co-authors of The Mystery Devil's Island and the nonfiction book Animal Rights, and the co-founders of Ashland Creek Press, which is a vegan publisher devoted to animal and environmental literature. Midge is also the author of the novels Floriana and My Last Continent, the short story collection Forgetting English. And John is the author of The Tourist Trail and Where Oceans Hide Their Dead. All really great books. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I love having you guys on. You're just, you've been with us for so long. It genuinely just feels like, fam, like you're our cousins, but like the cousins you like. So also that's such an impressive bio. Does it feel weird to you to hear your bio? I'm just curious.
Sometimes it does for me, just because there were so many years I did not have a book and wanted to. And then Forgetting English was published, and then I had the one book, and it took me so long to write and finish a publishable novel. So it is kind of cool, surreal and great. But I haven't forgotten the hard work, because it was a long time coming for sure.
The books are like tree rings, so I guess they feel a little old as well.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the better your bio gets, the older it means you are. Yeah.
Although
Exactly.
this will be a good sort of transition into what we're talking about today. But just because of what I do in the world, I was reading 2 books recently on getting books published, because what I do when I wear my World Shapers hat is help people publish books. And in it, they were talking about bios at some point. And there was, I'm totally going to mess this up, but it said something like, when you're really successful, you have like the shortest bio ever, like half of a sentence.
Yeah.
Because it's like, obviously.
I think Peter Singer's bio is like, he's a philosopher. Okay.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, and then it reminds me too of like one time, a very long time ago, someone said that the more keys you carry, the less important you are. And I am like, I mean, my keys, I don't even know what they're for. It's that many keys, but it's true. Like you would imagine that like someone extraordinarily successful just doesn't carry any keys. All right, let's use that very strange transition to talk about what we're here to talk about. So I would love it if either one of you wants to start by explaining the relationship between your workshop Writing for Animals, which you've talked about with us before, and your new book, Animal Rights, that's WRITES, and why you wrote it. So who wants to start?
Midge?
Dawn? No, I can go. So Animal Rights is, this came pretty directly out of the class Writing for Animals, which came out of the book Writing for Animals. So Writing for Animals, the book, for anyone who's new to all of this, Writing for Animals, the book is a collection of essays about how to write for animals, meaning not, for animals to read. That's the question we get all the time. What animals are going to read this? But no, it's writing about animals, but for the animals, in that it's about how to portray them authentically and as individuals and as realistically and genuinely as possible. And then we just realized there was this opportunity, and it was during the pandemic that we decided to create an online program. So Writing for Animals is also a class, a 4-week online writing program. And it's also an 8-week self-paced program for anyone who can't join us for any of the live sessions. They can do it on their own. And there are 8 classes in that particular program. And then we came up with the idea for animal rights just after teaching several of these live classes, because there was so much we wanted to get out there in a bigger way, beyond just the classes that we did. And we also were coming up with writing prompts to do during these classes. And we had all kinds of interesting questions about everything from craft to what do you call like a group of sharks, which happens to be like a shiver, which is the coolest thing. So we have a whole section on what you call groups of animals and what you call baby animals, the very detailed sorts of things that you need to consider if you're writing about animals, because it's all about the details. There are so many examples in books and films where they get it wrong, Jaws being the most famous example. And even the author of Jaws came forth later to say, I made a big mistake when I wrote Jaws. And he's, went into shark conservation and protection. This is Peter Benchley, of course. So anyway, so animal rights came directly out of the class and all the inspiration that we got from teaching it and the feedback that we got from students. So it's a kind of a cool workbook for writers who love animals and who want to write as advocates for animals.
How many students are there well, I mean, as you said, some of it is self-taught, but when you do a group, how many people is it generally?
I'd say no more than 20. I'd say between
Okay.
10 and 20 when we do a live class. Yeah.
That's cool. That's really cool. So I know that this is what the book is about, but can you just kind of summarize like what, and some of what you're doing here, obviously a lot of what you're doing here is helping other people learn, but I'm curious to know what you felt you learned from doing this process, because it must have been really interesting to bring together all of these different people who write or want to write and find their different perspectives.
Oh, yeah. And it's, we're writers, we're publishers, but we're also in our own ways, I think, evangelists to other writers, because it drives me a little bonkers when I see a book get it wrong about animals,
Yeah.
particularly when it comes to pronouns. I think we see that a lot in the news media, we see it in literature. And it's been really gratifying to meet other writers who are on similar journeys as we are. So we've learned from them. A lot of them are experts in various animal species who teach us a lot, and hopefully we share what we've learned, and they're inspired. And you can do a whole class just on pronouns, when to use them, when not to use them, based on the character you're portraying and their awareness and understanding of animals. But that level of getting in the weeds is really, really important. And it's something that we wanted to create a class that I would have loved to have taken when I was starting to write, because
Yeah.
I didn't think about these things, and then the more we teach it, the more I feel like the more aware we become of all the subtleties and nuances.
And I think I think we both also found it profoundly inspiring just to know that there are other writers out there who are advocating for animals and who wanted to do more in their writing. Writers who really got it. What we were trying to do, and we just felt this kinship with them, and it was really, really nice to just feel like, oh, this is a great community, and we have a sort of alumni group that we have a special alumni newsletter, and we've done a few open mics with our alumni so they can share what they're working on, and it's all by Zoom because they come from all over the world. So it's
Nice.
just been really, really fun to sort of build that community.
Are you familiar with the new novel, The Tortoise's Tale by Kendra Coulter?
Yes. Wonderful book.
Midge just reviewed it, actually.
Oh, cool.
I reviewed it on Ecolit Books. Yeah.
Vicky
As
just
well as
reviewed
her-
it for us.
I just started it today on audio, and I love, love, love it. And I just, I think Kendra is so cool. And that just makes me think about whether you have any favorite works, maybe classics, maybe modern, that you feel really gets it right in writing for animals.
Gosh, there's so many that we talk about a lot. What I find interesting is how many books are not, Kendra Coulter is an amazing writer, and she's such a big animal advocate as well as a talented fiction writer. But it's also inspiring to see examples of writers who aren't necessarily activists, who happen to just do an amazing job, like Karen Joy Fowler, her novel, We're All Completely Beside Ourselves, is one of the most beautiful novels about animals that I've read. And she's a phenomenal writer, but she just really did a great job with this book as sort of an animal rights book, if you will, kind of subtly so, but it was so well done. And then there are glimpses in so many different works where you can see animals being portrayed as individuals. And in fact, there's a new book out. It's kind of an academic book about Hemingway, about rereading Hemingway from sort of an animal perspective. And it was so interesting to see, and I can't wait to read this book. It's because it in our class, we take a look at one of Hemingway's short stories in a scene that's told from the animal's point of view, from the lion's point of view, and it is absolutely stunning. And you would never think like, oh, Hemingway has this great empathy for a lion who's shot on safari, but it's a really beautiful little scene. And so it's things like that we talk about a lot, as well as books that are a little bit more, written from an animal's point of view about animals. But there's also those books that are not specifically about animals that we ask people to look for and kind of, highlight. The name of the Hemingway short story, I see this in the chat. The name of the Hemingway short story is The Short Happy Life of Francis McComber. It's a short story.
Another book that you mentioned a number of times in the book is just a book I absolutely love. Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, though that is about animals, it's really more about what it's like to care deeply about animals, which is also a topic that I think people really struggle with, and which you talk about in the book. Like, how much do you expose? How do you bring in people who don't share that? And she seemed to have done that really well while she won a Nobel Prize.
That's one of our favorites as well. As also J.M. Coetzee Elizabeth Costello, another one where it's like
exactly
it portrays how hard it is to live in a world where people don't care about animals the way you do. That's another one of our favorites.
And somehow, apparently, they both managed to get other people to read those books, even though most people usually do not want to hear about veganism or animal rights activism or how much you care about animals.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to, I mentioned this on a recent episode, but it's especially fun for me when I had no idea that there was going to be a theme of animal rights or veganism, and then there it is. And it happens almost never, but I read like a lesbian rom-com and it's called Bed and Breakup by Susie Dumond. And it was like about a vegan chef. And I kept waiting for the joke, like for the vegan to be the butt of the joke. And it never happened. So I love
seeing things like that. Yeah, with the unexpected genres that happen to have a little animal rights angle. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So we're talking a little bit about like getting it right. What about getting it wrong? Like what are some of the most common ways that people miss the boat when writing about animals?
Well, falling into those old tropes, if you will. Midge mentioned Jaws. So nowadays, because of Jaws, if you're writing, if you read a novel and someone falls off a boat in an ocean, suddenly there's going to be a shark. You can almost bet on it if it's a book that has a thriller component and it's just frustrating for me because it reinforces a misconception that's been with us for quite some time. So I think you see a lot of writers fall on, someone goes into the woods, they come face to face with a bear, and suddenly they're going to die. Midge and I run into bears every so often here. We don't all die. We're not dying left and right. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. It does, but the problem is that, writers have a lot of power with when they put pen to paper. And I think they don't understand the implicit damage they do to animals by reinforcing these stereotypes or these fears that we have. And so I know that for certain books, you're trying to ramp up the tension, trying to ramp that stuff up, but there are other ways to do it. There's human versus human tension. You can focus on. So I think that is definitely something I hit on a lot with our books, and we review books on Ecolit books, and I tend to call out uh books where they just don't get it. The other thing that really bothers me is any quote unquote environmental book these days that does not talk about animal agriculture, these huge, chickens, cows, and instead they talk about electric cars, and and it drives me bonkers because it is so lazy that so many people just totally gloss over. And it's not just the environmental aspect, it's the cruelty aspect. But I know it's something that is going to take some work to do, and that's something we focus on. And also, when we talk about writing for animals, we're very clear that if your goal as a writer is to advocate for a penguin, you might have an easier go of it than if it's a cow or a chicken, just because the audience you're dealing with, and the way people perceive chickens and cows versus
Actually,
penguins and dogs.
In that context, could you talk a little bit about Barn 8, which is a book that I loved, which you actually called out as having managed to do that, to talk about factory farming of chickens and actually still bring to life a chicken?
Yeah, Midge reviewed that too, Midge.
Yeah, and chatted with the author as well. It's an amazing book.
She was on Deb Unworth. She was on the podcast when the book was published. It was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago, and I was just ecstatic to see a book about chicken farming, from a mainstream publisher. That's something that I didn't think I would see anytime soon, and it was a great book. Yeah, she actually talked a little bit about. She did a magazine article for Harper's about factory farming, and because I was asking her about her research, and she said she used that article to do a lot of her research, which was interesting. But yeah, that's a great book about a chicken rescue, and she has an individual chicken character called Bwok in the book, and she talks a lot about
it was pronounced Bwok.
Bwok. Yeah, you do it better than I do. No,
Vicky, I'm gonna need that to be put on social media. Continue, Midge, please.
She's a lovely character, and I think what Deb Olin Unfritz does so well in the book is tell us about factory farming in general. The billions of chickens who suffer, but by zooming in on, what was her name again, Marianne?
The author, Deb Unworth.
The chicken.
The chicken.
Thank you. By focusing on this character, we really get to see her as an individual, and it's heartbreaking and so important to the story.
Setting off to write that, it just seems insurmountable to bring, to manage to write a novel that's interesting, that has an interesting human character and sympathetic human character, and actually exposes what's going on in factory farming and actually focuses on a chicken character. I mean, that's a job, and she did it really well. And, both of you obviously also do characters really well. And all right, not everybody likes this kind of question, but since you've both written books, so you must like your books as they well deserve to be. I'm just wondering, are there particular areas where you really were like, oh, I got it right, or I think I did it. I think I did that animal proud, in your books?
Oh, that is a great question. I would first say that as soon as I see my book in print, when I can't change anything, my first thought is, oh no, I hate everything about it. But I think, and I write about penguins. So the book I'm working on now is about a different kind of species that is less, let's say, snuggly and less well-known for sure. But writing about penguins, John just mentioned a couple minutes earlier how easy that is because everyone adores penguins. But I think showing that, the perils that they face and showing how much our actions affect them, that's hard to do. And I have to try to do it really subtly. But, in terms of like, if you love penguins, stop taking those krill supplements, stop eating seafood. I think people who love penguins might not want to think about that, but how directly it affects. So anytime I can get a message in there, I do feel glad about it. And anytime I can do that in connection with portraying, an animal in a way that will make people fall in love with them, I think is a success for the literary activist. in me. Whether or not I do it well, I mean, I think you have to ask the readers, but you know, I think just having that goal of doing something good for the animals makes me happy. And I can't not write about animals. It's just one of those things, you know, as soon as I started learning about things, becoming vegetarian and then vegan, this was maybe 15 plus years ago. So my writing life has changed completely. I look at some of my old stuff and can't believe I was that writer. you know,
that's so interesting to have that kind of record of how you used to think and see how your thoughts have changed. Yeah. What about you, John? Any favorite moments that you want to reveal to us?
I wrote an essay recently that I'm really proud of, and it actually got good track. It was
Was
published
this
in
the
a
one in the Revelator?
Revelator. Yeah, I heard a lot.
I'm
I got
so
a lot
mad
of
at myself. I marked it off. I said, I have to
Yeah.
read this before we interview John. And then I didn't. So tell us about it. And then I will read it as soon as we get off.
It's about I mean, I'm a birder. I'm a nuts for birds, but it drives me bonkers. Once again, I'm using that word bonk. Drives me batty. I'll try another word. I don't know. I'm coming up with bad words, but the fact that the birding profession, the birding field doesn't acknowledge the birds on their plates. And so I was really trying to call attention to that through this essay. For example, there's, Cornell is known for their investments, and they have a wonderful institute around protecting birds. They have a magazine I subscribe to. It's wonderful, but they never talk about not eating chicken, not eating turkeys, ducks. And it is just such a huge issue they will not touch because they don't want to offend. And I understand why they don't want to offend the vast majority of their audience, but they need to be leaders in this and not sitting on the sidelines. So that was really what I was trying to get at with that essay. And I was shocked at the feedback. I got tons of emails. It was wonderful. I didn't expect that. And I was very pleased that the Revelator published it because they have a more mainstream readership.
Yeah, no, it's a perfect audience. Thoughtful, but not totally. And I have to say, when I saw the article, I thought, oh my God, I'm so excited somebody's writing about this. And then it was you. I was so excited. And I forgot to read it.
And there's a comment, Sumita, she mentions the Bird ID app, which is awesome. It's a wonderful bird ID, but it will not identify a chicken, a rooster, which is really interesting, which is really cuts to the core of this, the blinders. I called it a tragic blind spot that birders have, that the birding population has.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, I've tried it. It doesn't work.
That's so interesting. I mean, it's awful, but I love that question. And Marianne came up with that question about like, when do you think you got it right? And I could hear both of your, like the sort of writer, the delicate writer ego of like, don't look at me kind of thing. Like, when she asked it. So what about for each other? Do you have a favorite piece of one another's that you want to share?
Well, I love the tourist trail.
Me too.
And John, he's really good at writing these essays, like the one he just mentioned. I also love his plays. As you know, Sanctuary just, was on the podcast, as it is every Thanksgiving, which we love. I think he's really good at, he's written a lot of short plays with animal rights or vegan themes, and they are hilarious. And I think that's one sort of fun way to get attention, especially of mainstream people who might not think about these issues. And, there's this perception that we vegans just are so serious and we just sit around drinking wheatgrass and, and eating tofu, and we're boring and sad. And, it's just, we're regular people who happen to not, eat animal parts. And, but there's this weird, perception of vegans, and there's also a lot of conflict, especially when it comes to families and relationships. If you're vegan and someone you love is not. So I think John does a great job with all his writing, but especially his plays, in bringing these worlds together and making it kind of fun and hilarious and seeing the humor in it, which I think can also open eyes and minds. He just did Turkey Day, which is a kind of a Thanksgiving spoof of in which the turkeys are in charge, and they go up to pardon a politician for Thanksgiving. it seemed really appropriate this year of all years, actually.
Yeah.
Well,
wow.
except for
Yeah.
pardoning them.
Yeah. Except, yeah.
Not sure I'm on board there.
Yeah.
All right, John, you want to get put on the spot too?
Sure, why not? Well, my last con and is great. I guess I'd say Floriana, and then I've had an early look at what Midge is working on next, and it's always the latest and greatest. But I'm excited to see that one.
Or do we
See the
get
line
do we
of
get a
it.
hint, or is that not allowed?
I don't know, Midge.
Well, there are going to be penguins because I can't seem to escape them, but it's also it's a little more of a family story as well. And there's also another endangered animal that I'm not going to identify yet because I want to keep it mysterious. I'm pretty sure no one's ever heard of it, which is one thing I
Ooh.
love about this species.
I love
You're going to fall in
that.
love with
That's
them,
exciting.
I hope, as I have.
So one thing I wanted to ask about, because I think it's always a difficult choice, but now that we've already talked about Kendra Coulter's book, it adds another facet to this question, and that's like the place of anthropomorphism. I feel like you guys don't really do that a lot. You don't give animals basically human personalities, and I think that can be quite controversial. But when you pull it off, it can. I'm just curious to know, since we all agreed we liked Kendra's book, and that's certainly anthropomorphic. Like, where do you draw the line on it, or is it just a matter of whether you do it well or not?
Yeah, I think it's very difficult to do. And so I take a less is more approach to it.
Yeah.
For example, there's a Cormac McCarthy is part of his Border trilogy. I believe it was a second book. Has one paragraph, maybe two paragraphs written from the wolf's perspective. And that's all he did. But I swear by doing that, it made it so much more tragic and so much more powerful. So sometimes you can do it in just one paragraph in an entire novel,
Yeah.
and you can gain a lot through that. So but hats off to anyone who can do it for an entire novel, because I have yet to tackle that, and I'm not sure I ever will because it's very difficult. But I think if you can pull it off, go for it.
I think we don't see it a lot because it is so challenging.
Yeah.
One of our favorite books is an Ashland Creek Press book called Love and Ordinary Creatures by Gwen Hyman Rubio, and that's told entirely from the perspective of a cockatoo. And
Right.
it's extraordinary. It's so well done. That is really, really challenging. And I think a lot of mainstream publishers shy away from that. And I'm just speculating because we're not a mainstream publisher. Obviously, we published this book, and we love the animal perspective. It is hard to do really well, and we don't see it a lot. But I think in publishing in general, it's sort of something that people think of as kids' books. This is what kids' books are like. But I think that you don't have to sort of lose that magic. We can enjoy it as adult readers, and it really, I think Kendra did a great job. Gwen Hyman Rubio did a great job. We don't see a lot of submissions even with full novels told from an animal's point of view.
Yeah, except for with children, and with children,
Right.
it's all over the place. It's so interesting. I seem to remember Kendra was on the podcast a while back about her previous book, but she was talking about this book that she was working on at the time. And I seem to remember her talking about My Octopus Teacher and how its success has kind of opened, like they're looking for books about unusual animals, and she felt it kind of opened the door for her to have them consider her book, even though it was different because My Octopus Teacher was a documentary about a real octopus that obviously, but it was anthropomorphic in a way because it did interpret it to some extent the octopus, but it was reality. It wasn't fiction, but it was interesting, and it made me think that maybe, as you're saying, you don't see it often, and probably one of the reasons is that publishers are not interested in it. But maybe that is going to shift. I mean, people are more open to thinking, to broadening their minds a little bit about how they think about animals.
Let's hope so. And go ahead. Sorry.
Well, provided it's not the chicken's perspective is tougher, the cow's perspective. But if it's a species that we don't eat,
Exactly.
then I think you're right. I think the door is opening more because publishers respond to sales, and remarkably bright creatures sold quite well, I believe. And so I imagine it is a better time than it has been to do
I
that.
I know that I, I feel like we've talked about this before. Maybe we haven't. Maybe I just had a conversation with you in my head about it, which happens. But you mentioned like child's media or adults media, and I'm just curious about your thoughts on cartoons and like the way animals are portrayed in cartoons. Like, for example, Curious George, a show that Marianne and I happen to love. However, we're already down with the cause. So, like, do you feel like it does any harm, or do you feel like it's a good thing? I just sometimes wonder if, like, kids have this idea of animals that they're like exactly like humans. I'm sure you know a lot more about this subject than I do.
No, I haven't thought too much about it, but it's a great point. I do think, I mean, my cartoon, I Bugs Bunny was my hero growing up, and he was smarter than the humans, so I kind of grew up with the animals tend to be smarter
True. Yeah.
than the humans. But it varies on in terms of what animal you're portraying. But I think kids are remarkably open to and receptive to the fact that animals are really, really smart. And at some point we just either suppress it or get told to compartmentalize it or whatnot. Um, but I think I love cartoon. I mean, I still think back to but of course there's misconceptions as well. The Tasmanian devil, which was this whirling dervish, and we
Mhm.
actually saw a real one. It wasn't exactly like what they portrayed. So it can go both ways. That portrayed a really violent kind of scary creature. So whenever we promoted our book, people would talk about the Tasmanian devil from Looney Tunes, and we had to show them a picture of this
That
cute little animal.
that was the only Tasmanian devil I was familiar with. So yeah, I
Yeah,
had to
yeah,
really shift my perception of
right,
seeing
right.
them as vulnerable
Yeah,
and
yeah,
Yeah, I think
Mhm.
the rules are kind of the same. If the animal is portrayed authentically, then that's great. And I do. That's one thing about cartoons. It's fun. Is that the animals always outsmart the humans in
Mhm.
cartoons, and I think I love how in kids' books, and I think the way children think in general, there is no difference between humans and animals. Everyone talks, everyone thinks, everyone's on the same at the same level, and it is so sad that that goes away as we grow older.
Mhm.
well, I kind of wonder whether I don't think this is true actually, but I kind of wonder whether it is that because we teach children in a way that they're supposed to be just like humans, they end up being disappointing, that they can't that it's much
Mm.
more complicated to communicate with them and understand them. I'm not sure I think that's true, but I do always find it astounding how much nonsense we teach children. Like it's hard enough to learn about reality, and we teach them all of this stuff that's fake. It's like so cruel. And so we tell them a lot of things about animals that in cartoons that, are going to end up not being true. They do seem to adjust. I don't know how, but maybe that is one of the reasons that when they grow up, so many people like don't seem to get animals because they're not exactly like bugs.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm definitely taking us on a tangent with this. I realize that, but like, as a child of the 80s, I grew up with My Little Pony and Care Bears, which both of which I guess are back now, but with weird, like, not exactly right shapes and stuff. Um, and I mean, I was obsessed with them, but I don't think I ever thought of them as like horses or bears. Like I think it was just completely separate for me. And
yeah,
that's where I think
yeah.
we can really improve upon the media that children are,
All right.
taking in. But yeah, I know you want to get back to
I would like to get back because I mean, we didn't really talk to you. You mentioned you described the workshops a little bit, but I do want to get back to that a little bit and get into a little more detail. Can you just kind of walk us through the experience that somebody has attending one of the workshops? Like like where do you start and where do you what are the sessions like?
gosh. Okay, let me think here. We're teaching one next year in March, so I should be up to speed on this. Well, we open very high level, and we're focused on questioning a lot of key foundational beliefs, if you will, like the hierarchy of animals, hierarchy with, you know, the view of humans at the top of this pyramid, and that conventional view. Talk about the animal turn, which we're in the midst of right now, both academically and I think in culturally as well. And talk about some of these writers that influenced us. And then I believe we move into, Midge, help me out. Craft, is that the next one? Is craft the next
We
one?
have we kind of divide. We co-teach 2 classes. So and then we each teach a class. So we start out together talking about, you know, kind of an overview of the course and you know, history of animal literature. And then yeah, and then we take a closer look at things like researching and how to, you know, how to go about writing for animals, how to research. We talk about pronouns and, you know, just the little details like using it, calling an animal it. We talk about Robin Wall Kimmerer's essays on this topic, and and then we talk about craft as well, and we look at examples in literature, whether it's a whole book that is animal focused, or as we've spoken about a little bit, some of these smaller moments in mainstream books that aren't about animals, but that give us a glimpse into the mind of an animal. And then we talk about publishing for animals, because that is a challenge, as we've talked about as well. You know, our mainstream publishers really open to some of these ideas sometimes, but it's rare. And, you know, how do you navigate that? And, you know, how can you find some of the smaller presses that are taking a chance on these books, and, you know, how to get your work out there successfully?
Oh, and we talk about genre a lot as well, because that's an area that you know, Midge and I, with our mystery novel, we're leveraging this genre of a mystery to, you know, sneak through some animal evangelism, if you will, and education about, in this case, the Tasmanian devil, and also we have a vegan character as well. So we talk a lot about genre as an opportunity, and I think an underutilized area. And then another area with regards to research. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of research and researching science and listening to scientists, but you also have to be very careful, because you also have to follow the money. And so I have one little case study where we delve into research that came out of one of these ag schools in the US. And I don't know if everyone knows how the ag schools function, but they're generally aligned with animal agriculture and animal production for food. So a lot of the research they produce, which gets reported in media, is not going to be pro-animal. It's going to be the opposite. And so looking at, you know, being able to sift through that is really important for writers, whether you're doing fiction or nonfiction, to understand the dynamics at play. And also looking for drama in some of these stories, and because there's a lot of drama in these fields as well. I think there's going to be great novels written about people that are caught in positions where their jobs are dependent on animal suffering to various degrees, and their stories have not yet been told, and need to be told, because I think you know, humans aren't all bad or all good generally, right? They're all trying to just get by, and sometimes they get into positions where they get a job, and maybe years into it they realize it's not doing right by animals. I'm researching a novel in that area right now, actually, and I'm trying to be sympathetic to the humans.
Are you
Because
familiar with
yeah.
Maddie Krasno's? What's the name of Maddie Krasno's organization? I can't remember, but we've interviewed her. And sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
No,
it just
go for
sounds
it.
so relevant to what you're
Yeah.
talking about. It's representing people who either work in research or have worked in research,
Mhm.
who you know, have a lot of regrets about it, feel it damaged
Mhm.
them, you know, going through the whole gamut of what it does to people. It's very powerful. It sounds like they might connect you to some I don't know what exactly you're writing about, but there might be some
Yeah,
themes in common.
you're right. And you have to desensitize yourself. You have to turn off empathy. And I think that happens in a lot of households with families. You know, you're taught to turn a switch
Oh,
off to survive
absolutely.
as a child, right? And for various reasons. And so what we're trying to do through our writing is find that switch within our reader and get them to turn it back on again. It's going to be painful in many respects, but it's important. That's how we move this planet forward, because we all have it, I believe. For some people may not. Some people may be a lost cause, but I believe that most people have it, and they just, it's scary to question things that you've lived, the way you've lived your life, to question it at a certain point in time, to think, gosh, I shouldn't have done it this way. Thanksgiving dinner. I always hit on, as you know, Thanksgiving is one of those traditions that is so culturally and politically hard entrenched in this country of ours. And how do you shake people in a certain way to get them thinking about rethinking it? And I actually see a word that's bubbled up, Friendsgiving. I don't know if that implies not eating turkey, but it's neat to see people, starting to challenge the Thanksgiving name and rename it. That's a step. It's maybe a baby step.
That comes up on social media, but I don't think there's anything wrong with the name. I think we need to own it. We're allowed to give thanks.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. We are. It's just, I would love to.
We just do it better than they do.
It's true. We don't eat animals. So anyway, I think challenging traditions, when you're a writer, traditions are a great source for conflict and a great source for drama. So that's another thing we talk about in the class.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Maddie.
The name of the organization I was thinking of is Justify.
Justify. Yeah. Okay. I'll check them out.
My dogs are barking a lot right now, but I
Can't
think
hear 'em.
Zoom. Okay, cool. So a big part of the book are prompts. Can you give us an example of the kind of prompt that you lay out in the book, and then maybe describe what you anticipate someone might do with it?
Wait. Yeah, choose one at random. They're so good, and there's so many of them, and they're very thought-provoking.
Okay, I just opened to a page. I'll just read this one. Write about your favorite animal when you were 5 years old, then 12, then 18. Feel free to add additional ages, 5 to 7 years apart, depending on how old you are now. And then write about your favorite animal currently. And then the third part of that is, how has your relationship with animals or view of animals changed over the years? And that, I think, is interesting. A lot of our prompts are sort of like, going back to how we thought of animals as kids, when we didn't see much differences between the human and non-human as we do today. And to sort of think about that as part of your writer's journey. How did you grow up thinking about animals? How do you think of them now? And, how has that evolved? And a lot of, we do one prompt I really like, and I'm never gonna be able to find it in this moment, but it's about writing a scene with an animal and a human. And then usually we just have people write it. And then we have them look at the pronouns they used. And, most of the time, most writers will use an it for an animal. And, he, she, they for humans. And it's interesting. I actually taught a workshop a few weeks ago in which it was a small group, 4 or 5 students. They all used, none of them used it for an animal as a pronoun, which I thought was extraordinary, because that very rarely happens. And so we talk about how, and then I asked them to flip it so that the humans become it and the animals are he, she, they.
Oh, nice.
And, and then how do they feel about that? And they all agree it's really creepy. And then we talk about why it should be creepy when we do it for animals too. And, just getting those little details that make animals not stand out as other quite so much. And then we have all kinds, just so many prompts. There's hundreds of prompts. And we use a lot of quotes to inspire prompts. Then we have timed prompts. We have, writing letters to animals, writing letters from animals, just get some things that get your imagination going and sort of, put you in the paws or talons or hooves of other creatures as well.
Yeah. And crucially, just help you start facing that blank screen and getting something on it. Like, instead of, oh, what'll I write about? What'll I write about? It gives you something to write about, and then you go from there.
Yep.
Really helpful. Are they something that you use in the workshop?
We do.
Oh yeah.
We do. Yeah. we spend quite a bit of time writing, and a lot of times, the little open mics that we do, like those will be little essays that came from writing prompts, and we've had people who we don't see our self-paced students all the time, because they're kind of doing it on their own. But one of our students recently was inspired to write a letter. She actually sort of transcribed a letter from a local tomcat that she spoke with and sent it in, and it got published in a local publication. It was all about spay and neuter your pets.
Nice.
And yeah, so that was a big success story, just because it was cute. It was from the tomcat's point of view, and that kind of thing kind of gets people reading, and it gets people thinking in a slightly different way about this issue, which is, it's ridiculous we still have to talk about spay neuter these days, but we do.
We have a few more questions, but I don't want to go over time, and I really want to get to talking about the fact that your submissions are opening in January. Can you tell us about that and how that works? And just maybe a little, I mean, people want a big publisher, of course, but there are things that you can offer, I think, that big publishers can't. So people should be aware of that. If for those of you who are listening who do have the book half written.
Yeah,
I know that's not everybody, but there's a few, I'm sure.
Yeah, we talk a lot. We've actually, some of our authors, we recommended they try to find an agent and go to a big publisher first, because we think authors should be aware of everything, really understand the industry, understand how agents work. And it's not a bad idea to try to find an agent, even if it can take a year, and it can, and it's incredibly humbling, and it's incredibly competitive. It's still nice to have someone who is getting you in the front door of the big publishers and just representing you, particularly when it comes to the contract part, because contracts are scary and complicated. But then again, big publishers are big, and they publish a lot of books, and you're one of many, many, many books, and you might not necessarily get the sustained attention that you'll get from a smaller press. And that is, I think, where we stand apart. We're really small, but we, in this call, we're talking about books we published 10 years ago. We'll still do that, and we keep them in print, and we don't give up. We're now, as in terms of opening for submissions, we're going to be open just the month of January. We're small, but we're open for fiction, nonfiction. Definitely would love vegan-centric fiction and nonfiction. That is something we're continually looking for. Hope to see lots of that. And there's no fee to submit. And we're asking for just one work from each writer. So your best work. And yeah, check out our website, join our newsletter, and then you'll be alerted when it opens up. But yeah, we're excited.
How do people join the newsletter and find out more about it?
There's a subscribe form on the homepage of ashlandcreekpress.com.
Fabulous.
Under the About Us, I think. Because of our own writing, we slowed down the past few years, but now we're ramping up again. So we're looking forward to it.
Love it. Well, thank you all so much. I know you're going to hang on with us for a Q&A, and I do have a few extra questions for you as well. And I know some of our flock might too, since we're here for Flock Friday. But it's such an important topic, in my opinion. I mean, it infiltrates every part of our life, from the time we're like a little baby until we are no more. It's like, how are we writing about animals? And even when you said your prompt, think of an animal you loved at 5, etc., 18, yada yada, I saw the faces light up on the Zoom here, and I started thinking of mine too, and it just like immediately transported me. And that's what you do. That's what you're doing. You're transporting us. So thank you so much for joining us today on our hen house, and for all that you're doing in this world.
Thank you so much for having
so
us.
much. I was just going to say, yeah, it's amazing to be back. And Jasmine did make me realize how long we have known you and listened to you and been fans. So thank you for doing all that you do as well.
Well, thank you.
I appreciate that. I really look up to both of you and to what you're doing. So thank you. And before we conclude, I want to thank all of you for tuning in and remind you to subscribe on your favorite podcatcher or on YouTube, and follow us on all of the socials at our hen house. We're in our end of year giving right now as well, and we have a triple match going on. So if you want to learn more about that, or if you want an opportunity to join live our interviews such as this one, check out ourhenhouse.org/support, and we'll talk to you next time.